So I am going to be officially retiring after World's Strongest Man this year.
Hey guys, welcome to Talking Strongman. We are joined by the one and only Rob Kearney, heading in to World's Strongest Man again. You're back at World's Strongest Man, bud. How's things going?
Things have been really good. I like the events for the qualifiers. I think for maybe the first time in my World's career. So I'm excited. There's no truck pull in the qualifiers this year, or in the finals for that matter.
Yeah, no truck pull at all at Worlds this year.
And it's not as grippy as it has been in the past. So things are looking good for me this year. I'm excited about it.
Training been going well?
Training's been good. I have been working with Shane Germain and MST, for about a year and a half now. It was really after the Arnold in 2023. Revamped a lot of things, changed a lot of things. And yeah, training's been good. It's actually really fortunate. Adam Bishop has been living over here in Massachusetts for the past couple of weeks. His wife ran the Boston Marathon. So he decided to stay over here up until Worlds. So him and I have gotten a couple of training sessions in. And yesterday was fun with the addition of Nick Camby coming to World's Strongest Man now. The three of us got together for like our final event session yesterday. So that was a lot of fun to be able to do that with a few other guys that are going to Worlds as well.
It's really nice when you can kind of group up with some of the other guys and push each other and have some good sessions.
Yeah, it was also funny because we all realized all of us started as 105 athletes.
Wow, you were. Yeah. I mean,
all three of us.
Remember seeing pictures of Bish, super skinny, Bish and Hicksy, like they were competing at the same time. But yeah, yourself, former under 105, and obviously Nick now stepped up, did amazing at Europe's 2 weeks ago. He's looking good going into his first Worlds. You guys giving the smaller athletes, athletes want that inspiration, and you've been able to do that throughout your career. You've shown you do not need to be the 6'5", 400-pound monster to be a top level strongman. Is this your fifth Worlds?
This is my fifth World. So yeah, so I was 2017, 18, and 19, and then tore my tricep in 2020, cancer 2021. Came back in 2022, had a not great year, and then didn't go last year. And then, yeah, here's number 5 in 2024.
It's been an up and down journey for sure. I mean, obviously you mentioned a few of the things we've had you on before, and you've kind of gone through those. So good to see you kind of pass the cancer, and we saw you competing last year at the Giants Live. I predicted you to come top 3 in that contest, and everyone was going, you're crazy, Laws. Even like friends of mine messaging me, going, Rob's got no hope. And like, I know strongman and you know strongman, and we both understand our own capabilities, where we're good, where we're not so good. And you are an athlete with the right events that can be a real pain in the ass. Very, very dangerous.
That's something I've prided myself on throughout my career. I mean, there's definitely been shows where I just haven't had good performances. And it's one of the things I look back on my career, everything I've done, and it's kind of like, yeah, like there's definitely some big gaps, and it's, as an athlete of smaller size, one of the things I kind of had to realize was there are just going to be events that I'm just not good at. And is it worth putting the effort into those events to really get marginally better? Or do I really just kind of lean into the events that I'm pretty good at and really good at to make myself the best at those, to make sure I get those top points in those events? So I kind of like played that game, and, it bit me in the ass a couple of times in my, with competitions, but it's also a risk I kind of had to take.
Yeah, I see that with a lot of athletes. It's a conversation I've had with clients of mine before. You can't make your hands bigger, for instance.
No.
It's we can't grow once we're fully grown. You're at that kind of limit. But if there are events you're naturally very good at, then harness those. And then it is sometimes a bit of a lottery. You go to one competition, you can be amazing. The next competition, not so good. You can be a bit selective about competitions. Maybe you're not going to do every single comp. But we've seen you competing at the highest level. Obviously, World's Strongest Man. This is your 5th time. You competed at the Arnold's a number of times. You've competed at Rogue. You've done so many big shows and had great performances and beaten some of the top guys. Let's look at the events for the heats and remind people and, show people what you believe you're going to be good at. Because you said straight away you're happy with the events in the heats this year. Let's go through them then and kind of talk about where you think you can go and how you think you can do on those. Obviously, we don't know groups yet at this stage. That can always throw a spanner in the works. But starting off in the heats then, what have we got the first event?
So day one, we start off with the Webster stone carry. That's been an interesting one because I think one thing I've found is it's really not as much of a grip event as people tend to think it is. It's more of a how much pain can you endure event and when are your legs and your traps going to give out, not necessarily your grip. If you can lock into that hook grip and hold on. Training for that's weird. I mean, I've had some days where I'll hit comp weight and go nearly 20 meters and it's a solid day and I feel pretty good about it. And then just last week, my triceps were cramping after about 5 meters and it was a shit day of training for it. So I'm just hoping.
Isn't it, sorry to interrupt you, is it an event that you've kind of done every week?
Yeah, I've done almost every single week since we found out this was a possibility that it was going to be an event. So I've been training it pretty consistently. And I will say I've had more good days than bad days. So I'll take that as a win on an event that really has just kind of soared onto the scene in popularity over the last couple of years. I think we saw it a lot in the amateur level, the higher level amateur comps here in the US for a while. And then it trickled itself into the bigger pro shows. I have yet to have a chance to compete on this event. So I've only done it in training.
Okay. Have you ever done it with actual stones?
No.
Okay.
I've done it with, the loading handles and the rings. And then I've had throwing sandbags hanging off of the plates to make it a little bit more difficult and make the weight distributed in different funky ways. So I've been playing around with different ways to torture my thumbs.
It is one of those weird things. I've sat and watched a lot of people train this, and some people have some really random things that they do, trying to over confuse it. But essentially, you've got to lock that grip in and just have control of the stones as you move. I think that's the most important factor. You can't run like you can with a farmer's. That's the big difference. Like you say there, you got to cope with that pain and you have to control the stones. They're the two main factors. I hate training it. Absolutely hate training it, particularly with a hook grip. When it's a bit lighter, I'd rather train it without a hook grip.
Yeah.
But in a competition, I would go with the hook grip because it's going to be painful, but your grip won't be the factor that gives out.
Yep. It's just one of those things that, like I said, I mean, once you kind of accept the fact that it's going to hurt, it's actually an easier event to go through. It's just getting to that place of acceptance in the first part. I mean, that's the hardest part.
This could be a really interesting event at Worlds, one that's hard to predict winners on. Just because you're good at Farmers Walk doesn't mean you'll be good at this type of event. And if you're bad at Farmers Walk, doesn't mean you'll be bad at this. The handles are so much smaller. It's so much more cumbersome and clumsy in terms of an event.
Yeah, I think the guys that like this event, and after training it and feeling it, it really comes down to having a lot of that lateral core strength, which we see get used a lot on yoke. So I think guys that have like those strong hips, those strong lateral core muscles, this will tend to favor those athletes a little bit more. I'm hoping that I fall into that group.
Well, we know you're good at the yoke, so there is a yoke in the final, I believe, car walk,
and in the heat. So we have 2 yokes this year.
2 yokes. Car walk, you got to be looking forward to.
I'm so excited. I mean, I've done so last week. Shane, my coach, had me go up to 500 on the yoke just for one really heavy run, even though it's 430, I think is the weight we have. And I was able to do 500 for 20 meters in about 11 seconds. So moving really good with some heavy weight. I went down, yesterday we hit some yoke up to about 385 and I was hitting that in about 6 or 7 seconds. So we're moving pretty fast. And, so I feel really excited about that. I mean, I'm, if everything goes to plan and I can make the finals this year, I'm excited to get to go against Mitch in a yoke walk.
I was going to ask you that because I'm trying to think off the top of my head who the top guys at yoke are at Worlds. I can think of a few of you randomly, like yourself, unbelievable. Mitch Hooper's unbelievable. Evan Singleton, super fast. Evan's Nana is very, very quick on yoke as well. He's been smashing it in the Champions League. Do you hope to avoid those guys in the heats, and you want to go up against them in the final, or would you just love to go up against anyone when it comes to that event? Like, would you be okay with having a Mitch Hooper in your heat?
I mean, I would be fine with it because I'm going to win. So, I honestly do believe I am the best yoke walker in the world right now. And I know that's a bold statement, but I haven't had a chance to compete a yoke in a few years. I mean, we had it at Worlds and I won my group back, in 2022. But it's just one of those events that I just am always unbelievably confident on, not overly confident, but feel really good every time I get under it and just know I can move fast.
It's a nice feeling to have when you know you've got events that just and you talk to anyone that's good in an event and they'll say, oh, it's a confidence thing. But it's easy to be confident when you're good in an event.
Yeah.
I remember talking to Hicksy, he was like, oh, log's just a confidence thing. It's like, I could say the same about yoke. You can say the same about yoke. There's events that we're just naturally good at. And when you're well prepared on them, you just feel like you can beat anyone. And I'm pretty excited to see some of you guys go head to head. It would be cool to see a number of you head to head on those.
Yeah, events. It's going to be fun to see where the times line up at the end of the heats, after we do it.
Have you ever noticed with Worlds, they sometimes will put guys that are good at certain events all against each other in the same group?
Yeah, I mean, even in 2019, when I had Thor in my group, and while I didn't do great on the truck pull in the first event, they kind of rearranged the order for that monster medley that we had with the farmers and the two yokes. So Thor and I would go head to head against each other because they knew it'd be a little bit more competitive and be, again, good for TV.
Yeah. So what else? We've got the Viking Press.
Viking Press. I feel good about that. Ever since my tricep injury, I've kind of leaned into more of a push press technique as it is. So my overhead pressing has been feeling really good. Viking Press is always really strange though, because as you know, any implement you train on is going to feel different than what we have at the contest because the levers, wherever the weight is loaded. So I've been training it heavy. I've been training it every week, and every week it feels better. So, I'm hitting really confident, consistent weights overhead. And, I looked back at my training because the last time I did Viking Press was actually at the Arnold Australia in 2019. And that was about 150 in hand. And in my training leading up to it on the same apparatus, I'm hitting better numbers now than I was back in 2019. So I'm pretty excited about that one as well.
Nice. It's just good to track that progress, isn't it? It's not, like you say, it's not one of those events like an axle or a log that can kind of be easier to track in terms of where everyone's at. Every single implement is different. It's a bit like a leg press, I guess, in that respect.
Yeah.
But if you've been using the same one and you're seeing that progress, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, exactly. And, do I wish it was a different press in the qualifiers? Yeah. I would have liked to see a dumbbell, clean and press for reps or something like that. But a press is a press for me. So I know I'm always going to feel good going into that.
We've got the deadlift ladder. Deadlift's been a pretty good event for you over the last few years. How's it feeling right now?
It feels pretty good. I've run through it a couple of times in training, really just trying to play around with do I want a suit? Do I not want a suit? Do I want to go briefs and try to, just kind of play the strategy game of what's going to give me the best chance to go through the quickest. So finally landed on how I'm going to approach the deadlift ladder. And I mean, we saw it at Europe's that getting that fifth bar is going to be really big points, and I think that's going to be true through all of the heats. To pull 380 in a fast ladder is no easy task. So that's what I'm really shooting for is, I think most of our mentality for all the athletes going into this is fast 4, then kind of take that breath and go into commit to that 5th rep. And the guys that end up walking out with that 5th rep are going to be in a really, really good spot. Cause that's our second event on day 1.
Okay. So
Yeah,
you want that good start, definitely. I
for
mean,
sure.
I always, sometimes I'm surprised at some people's tactics on this. Like for myself, it would always be get through a fast four. That would be in my head. And then we'll approach the fifth and see how things are feeling. I've seen some people that are just going to go with the approach of I'm getting all five, plod through, and suddenly fail the fifth. Like, what would you, are you going to be trying to get a few the first through as quick as possible, or
Yeah. Yeah,
you
so I
will
mean,
do the same?
I'm gonna strap in for each rep, right? Like I don't want to have any mishaps with an over under grip. So I've kind of been playing around with strapping in technique, and the plan is to go a fast four, be confident through those first four, see how the body feels, and then honestly, at the end of a ladder, we all know you really got one good shot at that final rep. So I want to take that time to make sure not be too conservative, but also making sure I'm not a little bit too aggressive and going before I know I'm ready.
Sure.
And really planning out that rest after that fourth rep to hit a solid fifth.
As a competitor and as a fan as well, do you enjoy like a deadlift ladder? Because I quite like it, but I also appreciate how different it is to say a max deadlift or a deadlift for reps. Like I would look at my opponents and say, but take both of us in our prime. You're still in your prime. I am definitely not. And right now, I ain't getting even close to you. But in terms of our prime best lifts we've ever done, it's very close. So it comes down to who can get through those bars the quickest, which is a completely different mental approach to just doing as many reps as you can. And it does change the element a little bit.
Yeah, I think as a fan, I like the latter. As a competitor, I like a deadlift for reps better, right? I think just from
There's
an
more
athlete,
variables.
there's more variables. There's a higher risk of injury, I believe, in a deadlift ladder because, again, we're looking at speed. So guys are going to rush their setup. They could be off center from the bar. They could not set up properly. They cannot brace properly. And I think sometimes having that time element, even as professional athletes, we get rushed because we're at the biggest competition in the world, right? We're fighting for the biggest title in our sport. So every second counts in events like this. But there is some increased risk with that as well. And I think from that perspective, as a competitor, that's why I like the deadlift for reps a little bit better. Because when you're locked into that bar and they just say go and you're just getting those up and down commands, it's like nothing's going to change from rep 1 to rep 8, right? Like we're just going to go, we stay locked in. There's just a lot more to think about. But again, from a fan perspective, I think it's a way better event.
Yeah, visually it looks cool, but I agree with you. Sometimes the speed events can cause more issues than sometimes the heavier events because you are just rushing and maybe your hands aren't in the exact right position. You're not as methodical, I guess, in terms of
Yeah.
getting everything spot on. But it's an interesting one, and it really evens out the deadlift. You can have a 40-kilo difference in terms of top end strength, but that's not as huge as it would be for the reps or for the max lift. It's an
No.
interesting one. So I guess you've been practicing really quick Adam Bishop style strapping in.
Yeah, so playing around with some strap techniques and really just luckily having some people around the gym that can help me train this event instead of having to set up 5 barbells with all that weight. So, being able to strap in, hit the weight, strap out, step away, have them load the plates on and just go through the reps that way. And fortunately, it's been really good. I've had a couple of successful runs, had a couple where I missed the 5th rep. And again, it was because I was trying to push the pace a little bit too much on that rest between that 4th and the 5th. And just, ultimately had to understand it's like when you feel you're ready, take a couple extra breaths, then you'll actually be ready.
Yeah. So what else we got? We got the steeplechase.
Oh God. Yeah, we do.
You sound happy about that?
Oh, it just, I have to confidently say it is the one event we've been training that I get nervous for every time we're about to do it. Simply because it just fucking hurts.
It
Yeah,
sucks, doesn't it?
there's no way
It
around it,
really
right?
does.
Like typically we've seen this event and it's 2 sandbags. They added in a third from 120 to 140 kilos. And my God, that extra bag just completely changes the dynamic of the event. And it is, it really hurts. And, I'm an athlete that I typically pride myself on having pretty good conditioning. But by the time you're doing that 6th run with a bag, it's just like your legs are just shot. And honestly, for me, I noticed my legs going before I noticed my lungs going. So again, it's a good testament to where my conditioning is at. But yeah, it hurts.
Do you know the surface that you're doing? Is it sand or is it?
No. So from what we've been told, everything's going to be happening on that stage that they're building.
Okay, that's something then, because we've both done it on sand before.
Yeah,
That's another level of death.
We had this conversation yesterday, and all of myself, Bish, and Canby were very confident in saying nobody would finish if it was in the sand.
I agree.
I mean, even just on regular rubber mats, it is a difficult event.
I've seen pro strongmen not be able to finish with just the 2 sandbags in perfect conditions. So to add that extra bag, what's the time limit? I'm guessing it's going to be.
I think 75? It's 75. I can pull it. Oh,
I would guess it would have to be 75.
Yeah, it's 75. I will say, like myself and Bish, we trained at contest length yesterday and both finished under 60. Pushing the pace, and I think there's definitely still another gear that both of us could hit. So I'm hoping he's not in my group this year.
Bish is normally pretty good at those type of events. When he's in shape, very good athlete.
So. Yeah, he's in great shape right now too.
It's good to see. Because I mean, when I saw Bish at Brits earlier this year, he started off on the deadlift unbelievable, but I think he burnt himself out on the deadlift. And we didn't see the best of him, but he's a fantastic athlete when he's in shape.
Yeah, he looks really good. So like I said earlier, it's been really fun to be able to train with him the past couple of weeks, to be able to just get these final sessions in. Because I mean, at this point in prep, it's you're so beat down, and especially with worlds training, obviously you have to make top 2 to get to the finals, but you still want to train some of those finals events as an athlete like myself who's never made it but has a chance. So to try to work in 10 to 12 events a week is hard. And yeah, it's just to be able to have somebody to train with and go through these last couple of sessions with has been really good, just mentally, to put me in a better space going forward.
I think people forget that about World's Strongest Man, because we always kind of say, 6 events isn't enough to decide who the World's Strongest Man is. There's 12 events at World's Strongest Man, but it's weird how it's done, because it's almost 2 separate competitions, essentially.
For sure.
And I think that's why it's so tough, both physically and mentally. It's draining for a long period of time that you're there, but physically, World's Strongest Man is brutal.
It's unbelievable, and like physically and emotionally, right? I mean, typically the competitions we do, if Giants live shows are my favorite shows because it's 4 hours and you're done, right? Yeah. Like you can stay revved up and stay there for 4 hours and be good. The 2-day shows are manageable because there's typically 3 events per day. Worlds is, you make the finals, it's 5 days that the competition is going on at that point. Long breaks of time in between each event. So emotionally, to be able to control that is extremely difficult over the course of those 5 days.
Do you have anyone that sort of helps you with like nutrition and stuff like that at the moment? Because
so I'm with Max McCall. He's out of Australia. So Max has taken over my nutrition, and again with Shane handling kind of all my coaching stuff. So,
and have you guys got like a plan to help recovery between the days?
So he's kind of putting that all together. Fortunate that he also works with Matt Ragg and a couple of other guys that are going to be at Worlds. So a lot of us are on similar protocols in terms of the recovery. I mean, the biggest thing is going to be that recovery between day 1 and day 2, because day 1 ends with the sandbag steeplechase.
Day 1 does.
Yeah. So the events, we got the Webster stone carry, deadlift ladder, and sandbag steeplechase day 1.
That steeplechase is going to mess a lot of people up. And
I have mixed feelings about it. Selfishly, because I am one of the smaller guys in pretty good shape, I recover pretty well. So my competitor's mindset says, no, let's do that first, so everybody's fucked up for the rest of the day. Because I know I'll be okay. Whereas we have it at the end of day 1, everybody can just sell their soul, right? Like that, you don't have an excuse to not just go to that dark place and shut everything else out because you're doing nothing afterwards, right? Your job is to get ready for day number 2. So it's going to be interesting having that as the final event on day 1.
Obviously, final event of day 2. If you are in there, is the stone off. 2 athletes in second and third position. How's stones going? I've seen your stones before. You've been a great stone lifter. I think the fact that it's not a speed event probably helps you. It's more who can keep lifting that stone the most times. I was always more of a fan of that than a speed run. Are you feeling confident on the stones?
I do feel good. I it's funny enough, like after Cardiff, my I is the most confident I've ever been in stones. First time I finished top 3 in a stone run was at Cardiff. I think I was a 10th of a second behind Gavin Bilton, which I kind of throw at Dave Warner, be like, home field advantage, But I actually felt really good about that stone run, finishing in 22 seconds, I believe it was. And so it actually made me kind of bummed that it's a stone off and not just a speed run, because I feel like I'd be pretty in a really good spot. When it comes to the stone off, now I haven't done a stone off since 2019.
Okay.
When it was just the 180 stone, nothing else leading up to it against Luke that year. And I like that, the new setup of how it is, go through the run and get to that final stone and just go for reps. I can be pretty grindy when it comes to stones. I've had some really big stone training sessions, 20-minute EMOM stone lifting sessions that are just brutal. So I do feel, I feel pretty good that if I can get to the stone off, I have a shot at getting to the finals. But honestly, my goal is to win the group. I think that obviously it's my best chance to make the finals. It's always scary to, finding out who the groups are going to be, because there's always those few stone lifters that can just run the table, right? Like getting a Trey or even Rauno. Ivar's another one, right? Like all of these guys that they're great strength athletes, but may have a couple of weak points, but that if they can sneak into that third place position, they have a really good shot at winning that final spot into the finals. So those are the circumstances that get me nervous, right? Is getting into a group with one of those guys and having to go against them in that stone off. It would be really tough.
Yeah.
But that's part of the sport.
Oh, absolutely. I think everyone's first plan is win the group. Because even as a good stone lifter, you don't want to be in a battle that's going to take more and more energy out of you before that final.
Exactly. And I mean, it's that the final stone's 180. It's not light. And a lot of us can do a lot of reps with a 180 stone.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was heavier than that, to be honest. I
hope it's not. I might just be lying. We'll see.
I think it's 200, but
you're right. It is 200.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. And that's a heavy stone to be repping out. And there's some great stone lifters, yourself included. I always find with the stones, for most guys, yes, there's the Trey Mitchells, there's the Tom Stoltmans, but for most guys, no one's that much better than the other guy. So having that advantage of being in second place is going to be important, where you only have to match the guy in third. The guy in third has to do an extra stone to beat the guy in second. So there is still that advantage for coming second in the group.
Yeah, and that's, it's one of those things that, as a guy that has placed second in his group a couple of times, it's a little bit frustrating. In 2019, I had the best year, arguably the best performance at Worlds I've ever had. And losing the group to Thor by 1 point and having a sizable lead on Luke, to lose in the stone off sucks.
Yeah.
But again, it's how Worlds is, and got to play by the rules, play the game, and
it's we can all talk about it and discuss it, but once you know the rules, that's it. You got to get on with it as an athlete.
Everybody plays by the same ones, and we can bitch and moan all we want, but ultimately it's like, I still have to look back and realize how fortunate I am to even be at the competition in the first place. And, kind of just be grateful for that. I think a lot of guys, sometimes it gets lost on them. of how fortunate we are to be one of the 30 strongest men in the world to be at this competition. So like once I kind of ground myself in that thought again, it's like, oh, all right, like this is actually really cool.
It is pretty cool. And obviously, I mean, you contacted me recently. You said you're going to give me an exclusive. You are obviously sounding very confident and training hard for this competition, but you've said this is going to be the last one.
Yeah. So I am going to be officially retiring after World's Strongest Man this year. It's been a thought for a while. I think for me as an athlete, 2019 having such a great year, won the Arnold Australia, broke the log press record, great performance at Worlds, was riding a really big high, going into my first Arnold in 2020. I think where things started to get really difficult for me was tearing my tricep in 2020, and then just 9 months later, getting cancer. Coming back from that has just been really difficult mentally for me. And honestly, the hardest part is realizing like I've never felt as good as I was in 2019.
Sure.
And I think also just with the course of life, me realizing that I've been doing this sport for 15 years. I started when I was 17 years old as a 90-kilo athlete and then made my way up to 105. And then, in 2017, had my first year as an open. I've been doing it for a long time. So there's a lot of miles on this body, and it's just starting to take its toll. And I ultimately had to come to the realization of there's so much young, great talent in this sport right now that are pushing harder than ever to take these spots away from these guys. And I don't know if I have it in me to push myself to keep up. I'm 32 years old, and I think for me, I've always wanted to be at a spot where I step away while I still love the sport.
Sure.
And that's where I'm at now.
Have you got plans that you've got things that you're looking at? Do you want to stay involved in the sport?
Yeah, definitely going to be staying involved. You're not getting rid of me that easy. I mean, I have on a personal level, it's, my husband and I, we just opened a gym back in January. So we're running a CrossFit gym. I'm at, coaching professional CrossFit athletes with HWPO. So really just like kind of shifting focus to that for a little bit. But I think on the other side, like Strongman directly, I really want to get into more of the commentating, emceeing, stuff like that, kind of being a little bit more camera facing as an ambassador for the sport, as opposed to an athlete in the sport. So doing stuff like that is definitely how I'm going to be setting myself up, in the future and years to come.
Nice. So it's always sad to see, a great athlete, someone that I've enjoyed competing with, and obviously we've become very good friends. It's one of the nice things I think about the sport. Sure, we want to kick each other's ass when we're competing, but we're just going to chill back and talk about the good times, and then watch the sport continue to grow is a very cool thing to be able to do and stay involved. And I'm going to wish you luck for Worlds this year, because you sound like you're in fantastic shape. But after that, we got to hook up and do some commentating together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's the funny thing, because I feel really good right now, so it's like, oh, kind of going back.
Wrong thing to be doing.
Is it the right time to step away? But I think because I'm having that conversation with myself, it is the right time. I don't know if I can put myself through another prep, another year of competing. I know, I'm only 32, but again, after doing this since I was 17, it's like every single prep gets a little bit harder on the body, but also just like mentally, just trying to tap into getting excited to get into the gym and hit those training sessions. It just gets harder and harder every single time.
I've always said, like, I always look back at my own career as an example, and you see this trajectory where you're just getting better and better and better. And you reach this peak, but you don't know you're at the peak. And then you kind of stay at that peak, and you kind of start to drift down. You can get a little bit up, but you don't ever get back to that peak. And my peak was 2012. I went on and won some big titles later than that. But in terms of being the best I ever was 2012. And I stretched out my career a long time. And yes, I could come back and do okay. I'm not going to, you know, I'm not an old man, but the mileage that the body goes through and to mentally push yourself to get to that level again is extremely hard. And I don't think a lot of people understand how physically hard it is, especially when you're a competitive person, because you're a former American log record holder. Doing a 200-kilo log doesn't interest you.
No, it doesn't. And which is wild to say. That's a wild sentence, by the way.
It is. It is. It's crazy to think about. But when you get to the point where you are not improving, mentally, it's very difficult.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, you know, I think last week, you know, training for a max axle, right? You know, if I do make the finals here at Worlds, I hit a 195 axle kind of casually.
And that's awesome.
So great. But I was like, all right.
Yeah.
Like that was just kind of my mentality behind it.
You've lost that excitement of when you were on the way up and you're hitting PBs and it like, you know, you're celebrating. It means the world. Now you're at the point you're lifting these crazy weights and it's just like, yeah.
Yeah. You know, and again, like, I think that's why, like, I know it's the right time to step away. Because I just know, like, if I were to put my body through this again, you know, you always have that what if in the back of your mind, you know, is something going to tear? What, you know, if something doesn't go right, especially at the weights that we're forced to lift now, it can be bad real quick. So, you know, my main goal is just to, you know, get healthy, lose some weight, have some fun training again. Because I've kind of gotten into this place where training feels more like a chore than it is something fun and enjoyable to do. So get back to that place and obviously still stay involved in the sport as much as I can.
Good man. We need to hook up and you need to put me through a CrossFit workout. We'll do
I would love that.
CrossFit workout together and have some fun and
That'd be
sit
great.
down and talk about all the up and coming strongmen. But Rob, I wish you the absolute best at Worlds this year. One more round, buddy. Go and fight for it.
That's it. Yeah. Go out with a bang. It's going to be great.
Exactly. Thank you for joining us, guys. Go and support Rob Kearney. Good luck, mate. We'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Laz.